Swerb with the Cardboard Jungle, checking in once again with a recap of Week 1 of the National Football League action. Not a good week for home teams. 4-11 straight up, 3-12 against the spread. How much of a home field advantage really exists in the NFL anymore? I would argue not nearly as much as it used to for a variety of reasons, but road teams ruling the roost in Week 1. All three of the rookie quarterbacks go 0-3 straight up and against the spread, continuing that trend. In matchups of games between the NFC and the AFC, the NFC goes 3-0. Much considered the much weaker conference. You take a look at things after Week 1 now, the way Detroit looked, the way Green Bay looked, and certainly the way that San Fran and Dallas looked, Philly getting a good road win in New England. So is the top of the NFC much weaker than the top of the AFC? Probably still, but much more in question after Week 1. Also in Week 1, just saw a lot of rust, especially from quarterbacks. It's byproduct of not really playing at all in the preseason. So a lot of rust to shake off. Going through the action one game at a time in the Thursday night tilt, it was Detroit 21, Kansas City 20. Very impressive performance from Detroit, coming in the Arrowhead, getting the win in the season opener. Very impressed by Detroit's offensive line. We knew they were going to be really good going into the season. One of the reasons many liked them going into the year. Also, their draft class looked really good. Jahmyr Gibbs looked good to me. The big linebacker that they drafted out of Wisconsin. The kid that took back the interception off Kadarius Toney's hands. So if this draft class can be as good as it looked in Week 1 for Detroit, big boon for them. For the Kansas City Chiefs, no Travis Kelce. It's the worst receiver room in the league, in my opinion. Kadarius Toney with just a historically awful game. But really, that whole receiving core, you really just wonder, Kansas City if Kelce is not 100%, it really would be hard-pressed, even with Mahomes' brilliance, to see them repeating as champions. Moving on to the Sunday action was the Cleveland Browns 24, the Cincinnati Bengals 3. Browns really continuing their dominance of Joe Burrow, same general recipe. Browns defensive line, way too much for Cincinnati's offensive line. Tough conditions in the rain. Burrow looked rusty. Cincinnati just could get nothing going. The Browns pass rush, Darius Smith was brought in to play opposite Garrett. Jim Schwartz, much better scheme than what we've seen here in Cleveland. So a lot to like in Week 1 for the Browns. Chubb looked good, and DB's completely shut out. Chase, Higgins, and that whole Cincinnati crew. It was the Atlanta Falcons 24, the Carolina Panthers 10. One of my point spread picks of the week. Atlanta minus 3.5. Game was in control from the beginning. Carolina looked as bad as we thought they would look. Bryce Young, some things to like, but just it's tough as a rookie quarterback playing right out of the gate. Desmond Ridder wasn't asked to do much. Tyler Algier had a good game, and what we saw out of Atlanta is they're going to pound Algier. They're going to split Bijan out a lot. There's a lot of weapons there. The division is certainly soft. Is Ridder going to be enough for them at quarterback, I think, is the question that is left remaining for the Falcons after Week 1. Jacksonville Jaguars get it done in Indy, 31-21. Game was close throughout. Jacksonville gets a score late to put it away. Lawrence, I thought, looked good, not great. Richardson, I think, looked as you would expect. Made some plays with his feet. Showed off his arm strength and his just athletic prowess at times during the game. And there's a couple times where he just looked like he couldn't read a defense. I think that's what you're going to see out of Indy this year. Tough to see them winning more than 4 or 5 games. Richardson, though, again, I think there is reason to be excited with what they have there. Tampa Bay gets it done on the road, 20-17 over the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota, obviously 13-4 last year, all those close wins, but they get blown away in the playoffs, and this is just a below-average football team to me. And put up a lot of yards, threw a lot of passes, just not a lot of points. Justin Jefferson, another one of those games with 150 yards and no touchdowns. Kirk Cousins just not quite good enough. And to me, that's what I saw. This to me looks like a 7-8, 9-win team at best. But Minnesota just, continuing to perplex. With Tampa, they could be a sleeper. Baker is not god-awful. Going to get in there, sling it around. They've got a very good offensive line. You forget they still have some all NFL guys in that front seven and some DBs that can play. So I look at Tampa as a team that there could be some potential point spread value in early in the season here before odds makers catch up with them. But maybe better than the experts think, just because of some of the returning talent. Quarterback at least has some experience making a lot of starts in the league. New Orleans 16, Tennessee 15. Thank you, Mike Vrabel, for kicking the field goal down 4 late to get the cover. Tennessee was one of my plays this week as well. But to me, just a very physical football game here. And to me, the story once again was Ryan Tannehill. Tennessee was a pick of mine over their win total to win the AFC South before the season. Still like those bets, but just limited because of Tannehill. They brought in D-Hop, Traylon Burks in his second year, Tyjae Spears, who actually outsnapped Derrick Henry, another explosive back. New play calling. Expecting to see more out of the Tennessee offense here, just couldn't get it done. Part of that, I think, is they're facing a pretty good Saints defense in their home field. So I think that could be part of it. Could see both these teams winning their divisions, honestly. And both the defenses looked really good, and both teams looked pretty well coached. So we'll see what happens with the Saints and the Titans. San Francisco 30, Pittsburgh 7. My really only point spread loser this week, had a really good week betting, was the Pittsburgh Steelers. Liked them at home, getting the points. Liked the spot just for Pittsburgh. Purdy didn't make a lot of tough road spots last year, so kudos to Brock Purdy. Comes into Pittsburgh cross country in the opener and gets it done. Of course, Brock Purdy playing with probably the best running back in the league, probably the best fullback in the league, probably the best left tackle in the league, probably the best tight end in the league. He's got 2 good receivers. Saw Brandon Ayuk had a good game yesterday for the Niners. So just so much weaponry surrounding Purdy. All he's got to do is just come in and do exactly what he did yesterday. Their defense just dominated Pittsburgh. Let's pump the brakes on the Pickens, Steeler love. I mean, to me, this once again looked like a Steeler team that, they'll be 4-7, and then they'll win 4 of their last 5 or 5 of their last 6 against, teams that are hurt or resting guys, and Tom won't get his 9-8, but division's just too tough. I just don't see it for Pittsburgh this year in terms of the playoffs. But Washington 20, Arizona 16. Not going to spend too much time on this game because it was just ugly. Jonathan Gannon's first game as Arizona's head coach. Philly's former defensive coordinator. Looks like the defense traveled. Defense performance outplayed the parts. And it was a game Arizona easily could have won. I had Washington in all my survivor pools, so sweating this one out. They're able to just eke it out, but 2 teams going nowhere. Arizona going to be tough to see them winning many games whatsoever this season. Baltimore 25, Houston 9. I just couldn't bring myself to back Baltimore minus 9.5 here, just because Lamar had not played in 10 months, and so many new parts and a new offensive coordinator, and even with Stroud making his first start. Stroud, I think he dinked, he looked okay. Baltimore did just enough to get it done. Lamar looked like a guy that hadn't played in 10 months, but I think there's a lot of reasons to be hopeful about their prospects this year. Let's see if the defense plays. That was the big question mark for them going into the season. Looked good enough yesterday, again, at home against a weak opponent. So, jury's still out. Green Bay 38, Chicago 20. One of my biggest plays of the week, the Green Bay Packers getting a point on the road in Chicago. They've dominated the series, continued the domination yesterday. And the Justin Fields questioners, doubters, at least for a week, are correct. Because he made a very bad interception, some other throws that were not great. Those that are questioning, can he throw the ball good enough to be a great NFL quarterback? Jury's certainly still out. They meant to upgrade the offensive line. Didn't look like it. Very bad offensive line play. Green Bay just really dominated the game through and through. Jordan Love looked great. To me, it was, they utilized the running backs and play action. I like Green Bay this year. Was big on them over their win total before the season, and think they can can play a part in this NFC picture before it's all said and done. Raiders 17, Broncos 16. Sean Payton goes for the onside kick right out of the gate. They get it, but then there's a penalty. Kind of sets the tone for really lackluster performance. Couple things here. I thought Jimmy G looked great. I thought he looked crisp, sharp, fired up. I thought Adams looked great. I thought Jacoby Myers looked great. It just looked so much. And Josh Jacobs looked strong as he has. To me, it just looked like they had much better offensive firepower than the Broncos. Wilson was dunking, not a lot to throw to. And, it just to me was a situation where Raiders just made a few more plays offensively and were able to get it done on the road in Denver. So Sean Payton still looking for that first win in the Rocky Mountains. Philadelphia 25, New England 20. Weird game. Philly shoots out to a 16-0 lead early after the Tom Brady ceremony and a lot of emotions in that stadium. And then really gets outplayed, outcoached, outschemed the entire rest of the game. Hangs on to win 25-20. Really some questionable coaching here for Philly. And my takeaway on this game was really Philly lost both their coordinators. Jonathan Gannon, the head coach of Arizona, Shane Steichen, the head coach of Indianapolis, that both acclimated themselves pretty well as head coaches yesterday. And I thought the lack of their presence was felt by Philly in this game. Some of the play calling, some of the decision making. Mac Jones was really able to, after a bad start, look pretty competent, was able to move the ball. So Philly, a lot of talent. Jalen Carter played a great game. They're going to be there at the end. But some things to question. Anytime a team loses both their coordinators, that's nothing to sneeze at. So something to keep an eye on with Philly. New England looked solid to me. Their defense looked solid after the start. To me, this is a borderline playoff team. It would not surprise me at all if this team wins 9 or 10 games and sneaks in. Well coached, good defense. Mac can throw it pretty much where he wants. And they have, with Bill O'Brien, and they actually have a competent offensive play caller this year. So we'll see what happens with the Patriots. Miami 36, Chargers 34, and really what was the game of the day. A very exciting game that dominated the red zone screen time, especially in the second half. And Tua looked phenomenal. Some of the throws he made were outstanding. He looked big. He looked strong. He looked confident. He moved well in the pocket. He made the right decisions. Made some incredible off-balance lefty throws. Tyreek Hill looked like the best player in football. Miami was my pick to win this division before the season, and it was because of what I saw yesterday from them. Vic Fangio, the new defensive coordinator, very well-regarded guy in the league, gave up some big runs to Eckler and others throughout the game, but they buckled down late when they needed to most. And really, same old Chargers. Scored 34 and lose. Questionable coaching. The home stadium sounded like they were in the heart of Miami as Miami's driving down late in that game. Fans going wild in LA. So just same old Chargers, because they got Herbert and some talent. They're going to probably win 9 games again and maybe or maybe not get in the playoffs. If they do, it'll probably be short. But same old Chargers. Miami, good road win to get things going. And another team that I like to potentially surprise in the AFC. LA Rams 30. Seattle Seahawks 13. And Seahawks just lay an egg at home in the opener in a building that truly does still have home field advantage. Geno Smith looked like the Geno of old. Matt Stafford looked really good. And I think Pete Carroll's actually got a guy now that just sits behind him, and when he starts going crazy, make sure he doesn't fall. So I don't know what's going on with that, but impressive performance from the Rams. Like Tampa, you forget they have some all NFL guys on that defense. It's everybody predicted Seattle to roll over them in this game, and the Rams are to be one of the worst teams in football this year. And I doubt the Rams are still an above 500 team this year, but you saw there's still some talent there on the defensive side of the ball. Stafford is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. They got the Puka, Nakua, all those catches, and Tutu Atwell, and just guys coming out of nowhere to catch balls for the Rams, but impressive opening win, and not the way Seattle wanted to start the season. And speaking of ways you didn't want to start the season, New York Football Giants get just ham-hawked 40-0 at home against the Cowboys. Dak runs his record to 9-0 against the Giants. And not much to say here other than Dallas. A lot of hype coming into the season, a lot of sharp money on them to go over their 10.5 win total. And you saw why. A lot of talent. If they can keep this team healthy, certainly a team that can do some damage. Defense looked incredible. Offense looked incredible. It's a well-coached team that they just demolished in their own building. Nothing to sneeze at. I know it's not easy now to laugh at the Giants and Daboll, but very impressive performance by Dallas in Week 1. Of course, we have the Bills at the Jets tonight, still to come. Not a power ranking guy, but what I want to do at the end of these videos each year is try to isolate my conference semifinalists on each side of the NFL. So the 4 teams I like to be left after the first round of the playoffs in the AFC, and the same in the NFC. On the AFC side, Kansas City, still got to keep them in there, although I would say I would give them no chance to win the Super Bowl and little chance to get back there without a healthy Kelsey. I am going to keep the Bengals in there, even though they looked horrible Week 1. I'm going to keep the Browns in there, obviously, after a dominating performance in Week 1. My 4th team, though, I'm going to move Baltimore out just for this week. At least right now, this is a real-time exercise, and I'm going to move in the Miami Dolphins, who I thought looked great yesterday. I am not one of these people that is up in arms that nobody's given up a first-round pick for Jonathan Taylor. But if there was ever a team where it made sense to give up maybe a second-round pick or a second and a third or maybe even a first for Taylor, Miami just no running game yesterday, and it looks like the rest of that team is built to play if they can keep 2 upright. So KC, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Miami, my big 4 right now in the AFC. On the NFC side, I am going to keep it the exact same as I had it to start the season. Philly, Dallas, San Fran, and Detroit all really look good Week 1. Philly, you could argue they won and they covered on the road against a pretty good New England team. You could argue that there's some things to call into question there, but all 4 of those teams looked the part in Week 1. I got Green Bay just on the outside looking in on that NFC group. So until next week, this is Mr. Swerb with the Cardboard Jungle. You can find us at thecardboardjungle.com. We are a breaker of new sports card product, one of eBay's biggest single sellers of sports cards, so look for us on eBay as well. We break on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Friday nights live here on YouTube. So until next week, have a great rest of your week, everyone. Take care.